Hello and welcome to patch 14.15 of League of Legends. My name is Chris, and joined with me as always is my patch review duo partner Jason.
Hey, good to be back for 14-15. I guess this is the patch where we nerf all of the boots. Das Boots patch.
And making their first appearance on our show is my new guest, Moist Cream Cheese.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Glad to see all the boots getting nerfed.
How?
Why?
Tell us a little
Also
bit
good to
about
have you.
your. I'm sorry. Tell us a little bit about yourself and when you got started playing League.
I started way back in 2014, and then I took like a year-long break, and then I started my rank grind from 2017 to 2019, and then I realized it was destroying my mental health, as most League players would agree.
That's the
So
thing,
now
yeah.
I'm more casual with the occasional rank game here or there.
You caught on faster than most.
Yeah, it took me like a decade and a couple of enders.
All right. Let's get right into these changes. I'd just like to throw out there I recently released our 100 subscriber special the other day, but let's get right into these changes. And first up, we have a change to one of the client systems, this queuing things. Some of us are pretty passionate about this. I don't think it's a whole big of a deal. And basically what they're doing is if you miss the party join up thing, they made it less forgiving than usual. Now, my personal experience is that you tend to only miss this once because you're like, I'm alt tab, I was in the bathroom. It's not really often you see the exact same person fail this twice in a row, so I don't seem to think it's as big a deal as you do.
Yeah, so I was shot out of a cannon on this one. And the reason that you probably don't see people miss this more than once is because you often play by yourself, or if you're playing with other people, it's usually people that you know really well, you know their voice. And you probably haven't been prone to as many client bugs as some of the people get.
Oh,
So
dude.
I see people miss, I see people miss two, usually two consecutive queues all the time. Sometimes three if there's like a real breakdown in communication where you have like a pickup group and the leader doesn't know everybody's voice. The reason they're doing this, I saw an article a month or two ago that Riot was considering queue changes to combat stream sniping for the, 28 people out there who are trying to, watch somebody stream, get into the same queue, and then ruin their game, I guess. And I did, look at, their comments as they made this change, and it looks like they are calling nefarious reasons, quote unquote, the reason why they're making this change. That people are like declining queues for nefarious reasons. Here are the real most common reasons why people miss the accept decline. First of all, accept decline didn't pop up due to client bugs. And then they're like, huh, what happened? Oh, I must have just not seen it. And then they queue again. Second, the group leader started the queue without realizing somebody was AFK. This happens all the time, especially if, you're in a group that doesn't know each other that well. And you think everybody's there because you don't really recognize everybody's voice or their patterns. Third, yeah, somebody legitimately got up to do something during the queue time. Somebody called them from another room in the house, they had to go to the bathroom, whatever. Fourth, they had a change of heart. Happens sometimes, you hit decline. No problem. Fifth, maybe some people are using it as a tactic, and there's a big drop off from number 4 to 5 and 6. People using it as a tactic to try and get 3 or more people into duo queue together. Yeah, it's a little bit nefarious, but it's also kind of harmless. And then way down at the bottom, maybe there's a few dozen people out there who are actually trying to stream snipe and ruin a streamer's game. And this is just an example of how the people working on the actual game elements at Riot care about their game, but the organization overall seems to think that their whole product, outside the actual game design, but everything that's around it is essentially perfect. And that if players aren't using it the way that they're intending, that somehow it's the player's fault and they need to be punished for it. It's like the baby is getting thrown out with the bathwater here, and I hate that. If this kind of attitude existed 13 years ago when people were advertising private ARAM games in chat lobbies, before ARAM was actually a thing, they would have given people time bans for advertising ARAM games instead of thinking maybe they should turn it into a permanent game.
All
I
right.
don't know.
All right,
Yeah.
all right. After that spellbinding take, what is your opinion on this, Mr. Cheese?
I have friends who will be like, "Oh, you can queue. I'll be right back," and then they
Oh
do not
yeah,
be right
yeah,
back.
yeah.
But I've never personally seen anyone be malicious around like queue dodging on purpose.
Yeah,
Although
yeah.
I'm not friends with people like that in general, but I think it's just a little silly for the casual player who just accidentally misses it.
See, what you need is just Q dodge credits, like your AMRAM rerolls, where you build up a certain amount of street cred to this doesn't happen to you.
You could just connect it to your honor.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I think both of those would be fine. I
Yeah,
have a
then
solution that I
honor
think.
would do something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like if somebody, if somebody's really honorable and they have a client bug that's causing them to miss 2 queues, we don't need to give them a penalty for that. It's ridiculous. And granted, like, if you have a change of heart, if you got up to go to the bathroom or something, you're not going to miss more than one. But the warning is going to feel kind of bad that you have to click through that and they'll be like, hey, you're a bad boy.
All
Um,
right, all right, all right. Let's
Well,
move
they're
on.
they're
Let
following
me give my one solution
Valorant.
here. Let me give my one solution that I think would solve this. After your first non-response, so if you just if the queue went by without you clicking anything, you get an extra accept decline pop-up immediately when the queue would otherwise start. And if you decline that or you're AFK, your queue simply doesn't start. You don't receive a penalty, doesn't count towards your decline limit. You just never go into the queue. And if you accept it, your queue starts normally. And then we can leave the number of declines or AFKs until you get a penalty at 4.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're following after what they do in Valorant, which is the same thing, where you get like a message that says, "Since you generally don't have this issue, there's no penalty,"
Yeah,
and
that
then you
would
get a
also be
penalty.
good. That would also be good.
All right. Unless you guys want to talk about any of these other little tweaks, let's move on.
The ranked restriction one is big.
I just think it was funny what they did in Korea.
What do they do in Korea?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll go ahead with the ranked restriction. Reset
Well,
that, and then I'll mention what they did in Korea.
just the it's small, but it's big in my opinion. Where
Uh huh.
ranked restricted players are now required to win 3 games instead of just playing 5 games. Now you
Yeah,
don't
that's just
get
for
people
Korea.
running it down. Oh, is that specifically for Korea?
Yeah, and I just think that's so funny because Korea, it's like, yeah, we are going to force you to win games. If you don't win games here, you are trash. Uh,
Yeah, no more,
it's
no
kind of
more
funny messaging.
tier 5 Zeal Dravens in my game.
Yeah, it's kind of a smart thing. But it seems like they only take like this level of ranked restriction that seriously in like the one region where people are probably like killing each other over ranked queues.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the actual champion challenges. I think they're a little more interesting.
All right.
First up, we've got Akali, and obviously this champion has been in constant flux since her rework a few years back. So you always see her on these patch notes over and over and over again. And a lot of these things have been changed numerous times too. But as for now, the cooldown on her W is going down by a significant amount in the late game, and for how much utility this has, this is a pretty big deal. She doesn't really have a lot of access to cooldown reduction, being like an energy champion, so she'll always be kind of awkward in that regard. And then we got a slight buff to her ultimate, which does damage based on missing health on the second half, so it's a slightly stronger thing than it seems.
Yeah, it's I'm sorry. Cream. Go ahead, man.
Well, I think it's gonna affect the W cooldown being reduced is less even about the actual invisibility part on a W, but the lack of energy restore late game will be significantly more relevant in ongoing team fights.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So she'll have less energy by being on a lower cooldown?
Wait, on a higher cooldown because it's 20 at all ranks.
No. It used to be $20 ranks. They made it scale with
Oh, I
level
read it
now.
backwards.
Yeah. So
Oh, so
actually,
now
she's
she'll
gonna
have
have
more
some more
sustain in
energy.
team fights. Oh, I don't like that. Akali is a difficult champion with mobility wise.
Yeah, I think that the increased cooldown on perfect execution is probably the biggest story here. This is going to hurt her mid game,
Or roaming
and
potential.
yeah, exactly. And even though the getting a few seconds, because Twilight Trat, I think you still have to max last even with his scaling, right? You got to
Definitely.
max E second. So yeah, even with the little bonuses in the late game, to me, I think this hurts Akali a little bit overall. Most of all, I think just like little touches up and down, not too big of a deal.
I think
All
it'll be
right.
more relevant in lower elo, where team fights drag on longer, and teammate or people don't know how to handle burst assassins as well, and so the increase in damage, people will just see that, but they won't ignore the like the increased cooldown at all, or they won't acknowledge the increased cooldown. All they'll care
Hmm.
about is the increased damage.
Yeah, it'd be like, oh my God, what is the cooldown on that thing? You see that in all chat so much.
Yeah,
All right. Next up, we've got Aurelion Soul, and we just have some mana tweaks here to make it a little more punishing to maintain his channel, and then a big pullback on the huge W buff he got a patch or two ago, where the base amount got a huge buff, and now they're kind of pulling back on that substantially. You can just go right after me when I'm done talking.
that's more relevant than people would initially acknowledge because this W is used for more than just like one or two things. I mean, primarily it's used both for mobility and for kiting, but also just going through walls, especially like late game, to quickly get out of fight to reposition is relevant. So having the range reduced, it can be significantly more impactful than what it just initially might seem.
Yeah, well said, Cream. Like the amount of escapability that they gave him on an already very escapable, very tanky late game Mitch was ridiculous, and bravo to Riot for these nerfs.
Eh, I think he's in a pretty good state right now. But I know Jason has Jason thinks he's one of the most like busted champs in the game.
Yeah, not necessarily like one of the best. Like I wouldn't expect his win rate to be insane, but he's just such a game health issue. Like,
Yeah.
He's definitely one of the strongest late game champions. He outscales other infinite scalers harder, I think.
for sure.
I do think the way he warps like kind of the way the game is played in the late game is very powerful. But me and Jason have gone back and forth about this a million times. His early game is just so embarrassingly bad that
And I
I don't
agree with that.
just like Kassadin, just like Karthus, just like Azir. I don't really think it's a problem to be honest.
Yeah,
I
so
just
the
compare
reason
him
I
to
think it's a
Vygar.
problem. Yeah, exactly. Compare him to Vagar, like who can absolutely just demolish people late game, but can escape, isn't tanky, is a much more fair play pattern, I think.
All
Yeah,
right,
I think
next up
Acel's just stronger.
we've got a bunch of little
Yeah, I
tweaks
think they saw
to
stronger late.
yeah, a bunch of little tweaks to the new champion Aurora. Now, a lot of these are nerfs, but they're such a light touch that I don't really think she's going to suffer too much, and I'm actually pretty happy with the state that she's released in. Don't really want to go over every single one of these, but my kind of take on it is it's just a very light touch up on her like mobility and a little bit of her slightly bit of damage and utility, but overall I don't think she'll be pretty unblemished by most of these changes.
Yeah, I was gonna point out the mobility nerf just slightly as well will be relevant a lot more than people think, especially because they also changed how her dash works. But
Yeah,
she's such a
that
new
one was weird.
champion.
Do you want to talk more about the dash? Because I thought this one was like really
So
strange change.
by nerfing her movement speed even just by 0.9%,
Uh-huh.
they compensated by having her dash speed scale with her movement speed, which seems backwards, but is what it is.
So she's slowed by, let's say, like a Thresh box, and then her movement speed becomes 110, which is the league minimum. Um, Does that mean that she's only doing the weirding dash at like 400 units per second or so?
Well, it's still going to
I
go the
guess.
same range. It's just a matter of how fast she goes there. It's not going to ever reduce how
Oh,
far
weird.
she goes.
It's
I
gonna be
think
like
it's
just like walking backwards as she's using it.
I think it's trying to give her less consistent movement speed and
Mhm.
more drastic burst movement speed options.
Yeah, yeah. That's what it seems like. And it's kind of cool that it scales off of the AP now. So she's got 600 AP and has like 3 or 4 spirits. She could actually have like plus 40, 50% movement speed.
Oh, you can get
She's gonna be
psycho
just
fast
zooming
with her.
around.
I actually think one of the most important changes here is the recast buff on her Q. Now you can just recast it almost instantly.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
And it can't miss now, right?
I didn't know it could
Yeah.
miss, but that too, yeah. I think the recast though makes it, look a lot more like Ari's Q basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's some nice quality of life stuff here. I think just the cooldown increase on across the veil, which is her main mobility skill. To me, that's probably the biggest actual like story here. 4 seconds higher is a significant nerf. But I don't think that this is going to, like you said, I don't think it's going to do a lot to her kit. She came out in a pretty fair state. I think this is, I said it last week when we were discussing Aurora. This is one of the best new champs I think they've done in years. And I think they brought her out in a pretty fair state. I've mostly played against her in Arena rather than Rift, but I don't know. It's been a lot of fun.
I like her too. And as far as the across the veil go, when she's like laning mid, that's essentially just it's like Zed's W. It's just to get out of jail card if it even happens to be up. There's really no counterplay to it. Okie dokie, what do we got? Let's move down to Cassiopeia, who doesn't usually get a lot of changes, so it's always interesting to talk about a champion that remains, for the most part, static. Unfortunately, we got some pretty disappointing nerfs here, which I'm kind of surprised to see. Is any nerf to Cassiopeia because of just the frequency of her spellcast is going to hit particularly hard. Same would be true of like Azir or Rise. So we got more mana. We got a big nerf on her Q, which maybe she could be okay with getting hit there, but getting nerf here on Twin Fang is definitely something. As much as her like level 1 and her level 2 cheese is predicated on this, of course in the late game she basically operates as like kind of an AD carry. So I don't think she's ever been in like an overly strong phase for how incredibly difficult she is to play, but I don't really agree with these nerfs one bit.
What do you think, Grim?
I think they're trying to compensate with a mana cost reduction in her W, which is crazy to me because that's such a small thing compared to gutting her Q and her E, which are like who she is essentially.
Uh-huh.
Especially with the reduction to her mana growth as well.
Well, they gave
It
her
means
mana
that
cost reductions everywhere,
her yeah, um,
but you think
but
not
her
enough.
well compared to the damage that they're removing from her, it's not gonna compensate, and it doesn't. When you reduce her base mana growth, it doesn't matter that they're reducing the mana cost as much.
If they were going to make a change like this to Noxious Blast or Twin Fang, I would have liked to have seen them up the like circumference of Noxious Blast by like 20% to make it easier
Oh
to
my
land
god.
to
That's
land
impossible to get out
the
of.
enhanced Twin Fang, and for
Yeah.
them to slightly boost the healing on Twin Fang since it got nerfed into the ground a long time ago.
Yeah, I guess I do have to agree with you guys that like even these like small amounts of damage on skills that you're using repeatedly will add up to being a big nerf. And it's like I don't see a lot of Cassiopeias, so
She's very
it's not like
Especially,
difficult.
she.
It takes a
Yeah,
lot of APM and a lot of practice to play her. She's very frustrating to pick up.
well, with
that is
like
true.
Asol
Uh-huh.
being as strong as he is, and with Aurora being released recently, she's gonna fall off in the meta because there's just more battle mages replacing what she is known for doing.
I don't know if it's maybe in popularity. She's never really been that popular, but I always thought she was 100% viable.
Yeah, I just think specifically with Aurora and Acel taking the place of kind of close range mages, it seems weird to me that they would choose now of all times to remove reasons to choose Cass.
Yeah, I think he's got a little bit of a point. Like if you can be an ASOL, and troll your team in the early game, and then basically 1v4 anything and everything late game, who needs Cassiopeia?
I don't think
You
those two
can only
champions
1v3.
those two champions are the same as like Rise, Cassiopeia, or Azir.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aurora, there's definitely no equal sign there. Although I
At
still
a
see what he's saying with the ability to keep like
Yeah, at a
someone
major
late game.
macro level, they
Uh-huh.
serve similar functions, which is close range, mage, crazy late game damage.
Well,
Yeah, I think Aurelion.
Cassiopeia, if you play against anyone who's put time into Cassiopeia, they'll have no qualms about all-inning you like at level 2 or something.
Yeah,
So she definitely doesn't have like the early game weakness that a lot of the late game
That
hyperscalers kind of
Rise
do.
or Aurelion still have. That's true. That's true. And what's kind of interesting is with the base mana up and the lower mana costs. Before you start losing the mana from the mana growth, like at level 2, 3, whatever. Cassiopeia is still going to be a little bit stronger than she was last patch. So this is actually giving her a little bit of like very early game power, even though she's losing a lot later on. The one other thing that it does is that it allows her, because Cass is one of those few champions that can actually run out of mana, even once you've built mana items into the late game. Um, most champions, once you get beyond level 8, 9-ish, mana is much less of a concern. And she's one of those champs that can actually run out even in the late game. So the lower mana costs, even though she's getting less naturally from her growth, means that you can build more max mana items and actually get more skills out of those max mana items, which is kind of cool in a way. One other thing that's nice for her is there's going to be at least one item that we talked about later that she likes to build that is going to get some nice buffs. So this might not be as bad for Cass as you might think.
I'm not so optimistic. But let's move on to Ezreal, and we got a pullback on this incredible buff he got a couple patches ago. I mean, I think we kind of knew in our hearts that this couldn't keep going. I think, what was it, 2 patches ago, we went through his whole history of the AD ratio on his Q. It's just, it goes up and up like every year. It was like, when I was like in high school, this thing was like 110 or
80 or
something.
something. Oh god, no! I
yeah.
think it was
90,
100 or less. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, so I did get the
This
privilege.
140 was truly disgusting.
Yeah, I did get the privilege of getting to play with the 140 for a few games, and
How did that feel?
oh, I mean, in a world without Letho Tempo, I think champions like him are kind of have moved up in order of magnitude. So
All right. Well, for
yeah,
everybody who had lethal tempo on their bingo card, you can put the marker there now next to
well,
Shen, which is probably the free space.
you'd be foolish to think the absence of Letho Tempo did not impact like the 80 carry meta right now.
No, you're absolutely right. It's just it's funny how you're bringing it up years later, months later, whatever.
No, it was like you couldn't pick an ADC that couldn't use lethal tempo, and even like playing dumb champs like Ezreal, you'd still bring it sometimes. Honestly,
Yeah, what was really funny was like Lethal Tempo was in the game for so long, and nobody was using it. Everybody was using Conquer or Fleet Footwork for so long. And then just all of a sudden, with I think only some slight buffs, like Lethal Tempo just went off the charts, and everybody was using
especially the next person, Aurelia.
it.
I think specifically what they were upset about is that bruisers would take it as their like one-stop shop for like attack speed, and then just build
Yeah.
like tank, or particularly I would do this on Trundle all the time. Like as he's my go-to blind pick like top. You just build like Bork, Lethal Tempo, and then you don't even need anything else. You can just go straight tank, and he's got DPS for days. And I feel like they thought Lethal Tempo kind of warped the game for a lot of bruisers in particular, not even so much for the 80 carries.
Yeah, I straight up I would bring lethal tempo on people like Tom Gench, and I would just wreck people.
Oh yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds nasty.
And I would bring it on Aurelia as well as we move on to her.
Yeah, we don't usually always go over all of these like baseline stat changes unless they're like pretty damning or something.
Yeah, it's just slightly better like late game just because she has 40 more health to work with and slightly worse landing.
Well, that's
Anything you
base,
want to say about this
which
in
is more
particular?
worrying. Well, I always win lane versus Aurelia by abusing her weak early game, but they're buffing her early game, so now I'm panicking.
I don't know that this is a buff early game. If you want to talk about this, I think that the health regen, I think that's the most important in lane, and they're taking some away from that. Like, I think it's gonna make it easier to push her out of lane, even if her all-in potential early might be slightly better.
I guess that
I
makes
don't,
sense.
I don't think she's weak early game. Not when like every Aurelia you lane against is like
She's
planning
supposed
to
to be
have
weak
their
early
passive
game.
stacked as soon as they hit two. If every one of them wants to all in you as soon as you hit two, clearly they don't think that she's very weak early game.
In theory, like she's
Matchup
supposed to be
dependent.
weak early game. I always struggle like her, Mordekaiser, and maybe like Xerath are like the three champions that I think you're supposed to be able to beat early, and I just can't.
If anything, I think she tends to fall off a little late game. Mind you, it depends if you're going like the clownish like 6 attack speed item
Mhm.
build or something, but I think she tends to fall off more in like the supreme late game. I think she's pretty solid in the early to mid game.
That's interesting. I think she's supposed to be better lit.
Eh, that's just my
Yeah,
take on it.
I heard she's weak until she gets either a Vampiric Scepter and or her Bork.
That makes sense. Alright, next up we've got a rare change to Leona, who usually manages to get by season unscathed. We've got a damage nerf to her passive in the late game, so I guess that's okay. If it was like something that affected her laning phase, I think I'd be a lot more negative about it. And then we got a damage nerf on her W, which I don't know what everyone else does, but I feel like you're kind of forced to max the W, not just because it's the only ability she has that does base damage, but because it gives like the uptime on her trading potential when she has all the extra resistances.
Absolutely.
I play a lot of Leona, and I don't see these changes affecting her pretty much like whatsoever. Just you don't rely on your passive late game for damage. At that point, your team should have all the damage they need to just one-shot people. And your W damage, you're not maxing that for the W, you're maxing it for the resistances to all in someone and be as tanky as possible.
I also play a lot of Leona. I like to play her very, very aggressively at the in the first 7, 8, 9 levels. Basically, until I've completely maxed the W. So I think this will, even though let's say your level 6 combo, you're gonna have rank 3 in Eclipse. It's gonna be 10 damage off the entire combo, not too bad. Plus a couple damage from sunlight. I agree that the sunlight change is not that important because in the first half of the game, you do decent damage. In the second half of the game, you're really just kind of like a very, very good stun butt. Um, so the extra little bit of damage from sunlight doesn't matter. But yeah, I think you would complete maxing Eclipse at level 9, right?
Yep.
So 20 damage off the full combo, I think that's kind of significant. I often build her with Ignite and Sheen early game, especially if I'm a little bit ahead.
What do you build
Um,
Sheen into?
I sit on it. I sit on it until the late game, and then I
Oh.
sell it, and I sell it, back for 700 gold for whenever I need to buy my next tank item.
Well, if you're relying on her for damage, then yes, I could see how that Eclipse nerf would be more
Yeah,
relevant. You
I'm
also
not saying
don't
it's
typically you
huge.
don't use Eclipse more than once or twice in a rotation, even in like a full-on like team fight.
Yeah, it's usually you get one W and maybe two E's off in the fight. Definitely two Qs.
Yeah.
But even that little bit of damage, can be the difference between the enemy escaping to their turret range or just dropping and handing you 300 gold.
It can.
Um,
I think they really just wanted to touch up on Leona because she's influencing the meta so much right now by forcing ADCs to bring cleanse instead of barrier or heal or
yeah,
ghost,
yeah,
and without gutting her, and I think they did that well. I think
yeah.
exactly what you're saying. It can make the difference, Will it
Uh-huh.
most of the time? Probably not, but it can.
I'm fine with these changes. Like I've been saying for a couple seasons, I think that Leona is the best tank support in the game. One of the easiest and most reliable to use.
I think she's the
And
best engaged support. I don't think she's the best tank support. Just by
who do you think is
nature
the
that
best tank
she.
And who
support?
do you think is the best tank support?
I think there's other supports that are tankier, like in the late game. I think she's the best engaged support because she has the only crowd control that can go through the minion line.
Okay,
Okay, so to
I
clarify,
interpreted the question differently than you did, I think.
To clarify, I don't think that she's the tankiest support in the game. That would probably be Braum.
Or
But
Ralph.
what I'm saying is, I think of all the supports that fit into some type of tank archetype, whether that's a Vanguard or like a tanky Trapper. Um, I think that Leona is the best of them, the most overall useful, and so I'm fine seeing her get these small nerfs. I think she's still good.
I think
Yeah, I
she
agree.
exists in a really good spot. I don't really want to see any nerfs on her ever.
I mean, they've given her a lot of cooldown buffs recently, so I'm cool with this.
All right,
Yeah, as much as I'd love
let's
to see her buffed even more.
let's skip all the way down to Shyvana, and we've got some bad luck for the AP Shyvana filth of the world.
The crowd
I'm-
goes wild.
I'm honestly surprised they'd even bother to back off in this direction with all of the other AP ratios they've given to her abilities over the last 2 years.
Hmm.
But yeah, basically it's just a nerf to the basic E and a nerf to her dragon E, which is the big one.
I
And,
find I can't even look at Shyvana the same anymore. I recently had a ranked game. I was against a Shyvana top lane who didn't understand how her E worked, so
Uh-huh.
would never try to trade with me by like marking me and then auto attacking me. And she ended up going 0-11 that game. I
Oh,
think
that's gotta feel good.
this nerfs laning and late game AP Shyvana for sure. The increased AD helps her jungle clear a lot.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even think about the jungle clear. That's a really good point. Did she? I mean, she's not usually building a lot of AD. Right?
I'd say yes, but you're forced to max her W if you jungle her.
I don't play enough Shyvana to give you good intel on jungle
Well,
Shyvana.
her W is the thing that gives her like a Sunfire cape, and as long as she
Yeah,
keeps
yeah,
auto
yeah.
attacking, she doubles
Fair
the
enough.
duration of it. Yeah.
I know her E marks the target and does bonus max health damage that scales with her AD.
Oh yeah, that would be good against like the medium and large jungle creeps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I think we're always happy when we see tank and AD Shyvana buffed and
Yeah.
AP Shyvana nerfed.
I think AP
So
Shyvana is just a cop out.
I think that AP Shyvana is just like complete cheese, right? It's
Yes.
it's
It's just a low
yeah,
effort build.
Totally.
it's completely non-interactive.
Make no mistake, she's like very close to being one of the next champions that's going to get reworked in the
Oh yeah, they've
foreseeable
been talking
future.
about reworking her for how many years now?
A long
It's
time, but now I think they're serious.
it's almost surprising to see her get like these like little adjustments with them being so close, hopefully, to getting reworked.
I really hope
But
that they'll make her emphasize into more of like a muscular, burly, like tanky bruiser in the rework, than opt into some kind of fiery casting thing that's
yeah,
similar to
like
what we have
Shyvana
now.
should not be Zoe. Can we all agree on that? Shyvana should not be Zoe.
I want her to look like a dragon
Especially not
from
with the
like WoW.
tankiness.
Okay, next up we've got some more changes to Skarner, who I think has been nerfed almost every patch since his rework. I was of the
This is
opinion
the
that
first
he
time to get fucked.
Yeah, I was of the opinion that he actually came out like in a pretty solid state when he was reworked, but I guess I was way off the mark.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't,
No,
I didn't
he
really
was
think
he was a
too
menace.
soft.
He was
Eh.
so tanky.
Yeah.
Arcane Comet top lane.
yeah, and just like the ease with which he could just shred through tanks was, if that was the only thing he could do, sure. But no, it was pretty ridiculous when he came out. I wasn't playing too much, but at that point, but definitely the chatter around the league community, the talk of the town was that he needed to go.
Eh.
It wasn't even his damage as much as it was his durability, and he could just slow you so much that, especially in top lane, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't interact with him.
Yeah. I mean, you could interact with him, but he would destroy you.
Yeah, exactly. He would kite you and then not die.
So it looks like they finally got him to a point where they consider him fair, and they're easing off a couple of the nerfs that they gave him. For example, the mana cost on Shattered Earth, which I think was originally 20 or 30. They're starting to pull back on that a little bit now.
Yeah.
And
First empowered attack after casting now declares the automatic base attack more quickly and smoothly. What does that mean?
that's basically like after you use the Q, there's less of a delay and less clunkiness in terms of being able to click somebody and make him auto attack for the bonus damage. Basically, I think before, if you had clicked on them like very quickly after you use the skill, you get a little bit of janky behavior.
I gotcha.
Alright, let's move on to Silas, who is much more popular than Cassiopeia, but also got a pretty damning nerf here. We've got a little more armor, but we've got nerfs across the board for all of his most important stuff. And his one saving grace is a new health scaling on his heal, which is definitely interesting, and I like that they added something like that. But there's just so much here that is bad for him. It's hard to even understate or overstate it.
It feels like they're almost just trying to like. I don't know what they're trying to do with the 5% bonus health when they then nerf the healing AP ratio by 15%. It feels like they're trying to do two things at once and it's not working.
Yeah, especially since that is the basic heal. That heal AP ratio is increased when he's like below 60% health or something. So it's even more like kind of depressing than it even looks.
Yeah, and this new health bonus health scaling heal will also get doubled when he's low.
I hope so.
Or up to doubled. Yeah, it also scales. But I mean, I know that we have kind of lauded them for encouraging tankier builds on champions that are feasibly or meant to be tanky. In some of the in some of the other patches this year, maybe they were just so happy that you actually were giving them their flowers, Chrissy, and they decided they would just do this for everyone. But Silas, yeah, he can be tanky within a fight, but he is kind of a champion that needs to build AP. I don't think there's really a lot of room in his inventory for a lot of
Rod
bonus.
of Ages, Cosmic Drive, that's it.
I mean, yeah, but really, I mean, is that what you want to build on Silas? Rod of Ages?
When he first came out, his base numbers were so strong that he could build a lot of free and silly things. Now, to get the same kind of impact, he has to be very AP heavy.
Yeah, and I feel like, if his build were more flexible, this could be a cool change. I feel like you're just still not going to be able to build a lot of bonus health, even if you have, let's say, 2,000 bonus health, which I think is more than most Silases will ever have. That's 100 more healing from Kingslayer, up to 200 more, but 100 is the base amount. Yeah, and you can compare that to, I mean, let's say you have, 400 AP. You're losing 60 healing. So you're actually, let's say you had 400 AP and 2,000 bonus health somehow. You're actually getting a gain here, but I think that's kind of unrealistic.
Waiting for the day that I see a full HP tank Silas support. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people will try it.
A lot of this, I think, would have been okay if they helped him in the right places to make up for this, which in my opinion would be reverting like the 2 or 3 cooldown nerfs that Kingslayer has gotten, so he can heal when he's low more often.
Mhm.
And I think they should have pushed some of the power from Abduct and Abscond into Chain Lash. I think that would have made more sense.
That would be interesting. That would give him more power when he's like in the heart of a team
Yeah,
fight rather
and
than skirting around it.
I know it's kind of silly, but maybe they should have also given him like more base health and health per level too, just icing on the cake.
I don't know that he needed any of that. And I will say that even the 1 second cooldown reduction on Chain Lash will be helpful to him. But yeah, I don't know that he was a problematic enough champion that they needed to give him all these AP nerfs in the first place. Just leave him alone would have been fine.
I
Yeah, I
agree,
didn't even hear about it on
because
other servers.
I think he's been much scarier in the past. All right, enough of Silas. Let's move all the way
I wa-
down to
Very briefly, I
Varus.
want to touch on Talon's thing. If you guys
Okay.
saw that,
Oh yeah, that's
does,
right.
does that just mean that he no longer has a stab to his Q? It always dashes.
Oh no, I think that it still does damage.
No. But I meant like
Uh,
you used to be able to like auto cancel like a stab animation because it was just like a melee attack.
oh, I see what you mean.
Well, I imagine if he's still in melee range, he'll still do that like auto and then the quick reset and then do like the two looking autos like he's always done. If he's not in attack range, then but he's within the old distance of the leap range, now he'll just continue to leap instead of having to be outside of that range.
I thought that what they were saying was that the in the past, the actual distance that you got within the target depended on where you casted it from. So that if you were very far away, you'd be a little more than 150 units away. Whereas if you were pretty close in, let's say you were already at 160 units, you'd jump to within 80, 90, 100 units.
Well, I might be wrong,
Now,
but I'm pretty sure the reason it's specifically 150 is because his base attack range, and when his Q is active, it probably gives him more attack range. So anything higher than this, he'll just jump to the person. If it was lower than this, he would just be able to auto them.
I'm just looking it up on the official ones right
Uh,
now. Looks like this is actually meant to be a buff. He's got a frustration point where his spells can sometimes
oh,
betray him. Yeah. So I think it's exactly what you're saying. Sometimes it would take him where he was just a little bit out of his attack range. And now it'll be easier for him to get we're buffing his Q to dash toward his opponent in almost all cases to help him get that follow-up basic attack. Good call, Chrissy.
Alright, let's move on to Varus, which got an interesting change to his slightly new passive to make it a bit more noteworthy. We were making fun of it in a couple patches ago for doing so little beyond what it had already done for like 10 years. But now they're buffing it a bit so he gets a little more value out of the extra bonus attack speed.
Increases ability power as well.
Yeah.
So it not only just gives him attack speed anymore, it actually like increases other aspects to his kit, including his attack speed cap.
It's basically like
And
Conqueror, it's just giving you scraps, you know?
yeah, but now it's more than just attack speed, which does make it a lot more relevant and threatening in a team fight. Especially because they specified champion kills. Because it used to just be like, oh, I can just fight someone after killing like one minion, and all of a sudden my attack speed is way higher.
I'm betting it's actually still takedowns, even though it says champion kill.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
probably. There's very few things in the game that actually require you to be the one that kills the enemy champ to get a bonus. I haven't seen a Varus in a game since he got changed, which I think maybe speaks a little bit to that all the changes were silly and didn't really make him more satisfying to play.
Well, they didn't change so much that he can't still do like a lot of the builds has been going for several years. If you're one of the low
That's
effort
true.
lethality people, you can still do that. If you want to build him crit or on hit, you can still do that. If you're one of those
I just don't
magic,
have a lot to say here.
snowflakes, you can still go AP.
And it's like even even if he's getting bigger buffs to Living Vengeance to make it truly matter sometimes, they're taking away on hit damage on the quiver. So I don't really have much to say on that one.
Nope.
I don't think these are real significant, even though they look like they're nice spicy changes.
No, the on hit damage on his W passive will be, I think, a little bit relevant, especially in laning phase, CSing.
Oh yeah, yeah. And they're taking that away.
Alright, next up we've got some changes to Yasuo and Yone, but one of them is getting a Q buff. Usually whenever they buff one of them or nerf one of them, they both get buffed or nerfed, because their Qs kind of have to exist in this perfect state of unison. So Yone's Q is going to do more damage and more ultimate uptime, while Yasuo's dash is getting some more base damage.
What does bonus damage per stack
Well,
mean?
when he dashes to minions or enemy champions, he gets 1 stack, and it only goes up to 2. And what it does is it multiplies the base damage for each consecutive dash after that.
Huh, I never knew that. I never read that deep into his E. I just knew adult damage and
the base
dash
damage on his E
cooldown.
is so low, it's a very underwhelming part of his kit.
Right. I don't, yeah.
Yeah, it does keep scaling up though each time you use it. So I think that these are actually like some
No,
for both
it
Trashuo and
it only stacks twice.
Okay, but that's still like significant extra damage on top of what he already had. It's 30 more at rank 5.
Yeah,
Which again, if you have 2 stacks, it's 45 more. And he's using this with such a low cooldown.
I almost feel like the base armor is more relevant though.
Probably,
Just getting him through the laning phase and not going 0-10.
Probably, yeah.
But 0-10 is where he hits his power spike, man.
Oh, maybe it's a nerf, guys.
When he's 2-8, he's not going to be as powerful as when he was 0-10.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Alright, next up we've got Zed, and we've got another in a long line of buffs to his Q, which has just been buffed like 15 times over like the last 5 years. It's been nerfed a couple times in that period too, but right now it's getting buffed again. More base damage, less AD though for the ratio. Got any opinion on that?
This is a champion that that probably went 5 seasons at one point with fewer than 5 changes, and I think he's already been on the patch notes probably 5 times this season, and we're only halfway through it.
I doubt he's ever.
I don't even think the
change.
I don't even think the increased cooldown on his ult matters in the late game. I don't think the extra 20 seconds will do like anything once he has like full build.
Yeah, he actually, like, with those lethality items can, like, stack up a reasonable amount of ability haste, right?
Yeah, it won't matter. It's pretty much just a net buff on everything else, which will destroy low elo, because low elo does not know how to play around Zed.
Well, the AD ratios decreased on Shuriken. You still feel like this is a net buff overall?
Yeah, because, well, for low elo, he's gonna snowball heavy. He's a snowball heavy character in low elo. I think we'll see less of him in high elo though. But he's already not that popular in high elo.
Okay, so you think that just like the base damage from rank ups early game is gonna be what makes him such a good snowballer?
Yeah, because snowball is so much more prevalent in low elo that early game champs. I mean, yes, also people don't know how to close out games, so late game, hyper late game champs also can, so it goes both ways. But if someone knows how to play Zed just at a basic level, they'll be able to take over a game in low elo.
Okay, interesting. I see your point. I don't necessarily see it going the same way. Yeah, I think that just kind of losing the AD ratios and even to some extent the death mark cooldowns are going to make him a little bit less of a terror. But I could see what you're saying possibly happening.
If you view him more as an assassin and less as a bruiser, I don't think it matters because I think he can still one-shot his targets
Oh yeah,
who he
you
chooses to
can't put
target.
better the bruiser. He has to be an assassin.
Right, but my point is that
Mhm.
the damage nerfs, he'll still be able to one-shot like any ADC as long as they don't have enough peel. And so I just don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be that relevant in that sense.
All right, and then rounding things out, we've got a pretty minuscule nerf, I suppose, to Zyra, where she'll generate plants at a slightly less often.
They've touched this like 4 times in the last few months.
I don't know why they're
Is there
bothering.
anything to say?
They're trying to find a sweet spot, but they won't.
It'd be more exciting if she just spat one out like every 3 seconds at like level 18.
She's like a Kog'Maw
Jeez.
with plants.
Sure.
Changes
It-
changes everything into a jungle.
It would give her a reward for like, getting to the late game, like Kassadin with his rank 3 ultimate or something similar, you know.
I don't think that's the like I don't think that's her role in the meta. Not to be like a late game zoning like that in that sense. She's still pretty threatening with her
Yeah, she's a
W.
trapper. You think of her like Morgana or something like that. Is kind of what Zyra does. She's there to to hold enemies in place for a few seconds and do some reasonable damage while she's doing it.
I just think it'd be more interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if she's like in a book somewhere at Riot HQ to be reworked within like the next few years. I don't think she's aged the well. the
What brings
greatest.
about that theory? Is that she hasn't aged well?
I think in like trying to visualize what Riot thinks, and I think they're thinking that they can probably come up with in this day and age with like the physicality and like technicality of like the amount of abilities they put in the game. They're probably thinking this is like a champion in the game that we can do a lot more with now than we could in like 2011 or 12.
Okay.
And this isn't even the original version of Zyra. This is the reworked Zyra from several years ago. If you guys remember her old passive where she just shot the big spine out of the plant when she died.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I remember
That
that.
was,
Like, so long ago.
yeah.
That was lame.
Alright, that does it for champions. Let's move on to some items. We don't have a ton to talk about. It's kind of just a lot of rejiggering of prices for the most part. The one that stands out the most to me, I'm not going to go over all of these, so we can go through them and you guys just talk about what speaks to you. The one that jumps out to me the most, though, is Abyssal Mask, and that's because it was like 5 or 6 years ago that this had a really long range, so much so that it was considered viable to pick up on things like Rise and Cassiopeia back then. Now it's been slowly creeping up and has like long range once again, and now that this has 30% like magic reduction, I mean that's just silly enough where you can combine it with a lot of other funny things.
Yeah, I agree. AP is ridiculously strong right now. So Abyssal Masters goes well with that.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most interesting changes as well. I did some just quick math. Let's say the opponent has 100 magic resist, and obviously you're often buying this when they have more than 100. But let's just say they have 100. You're taking their you're basically your team's magic damage is being divided by 1.7 instead of 2 when you have this 30% resistance reduction near them. And that means your team's going to do about 20% more magic damage, which is significant. Definitely significant. The fact that it costs more, but you're getting more of an effect from it, definitely pushes this into more like full tank territory. I'm thinking like Dr. Mundo, Ornn, Sho'Gath, rather than like the tank-ish supports, who can still use this effectively if you don't have a better user on the team. But I think the higher expense, higher effect means that this is going to be best now for magic damage tanks, like full tanks in the top lane.
Yeah. A Mumu too. It'll be huge.
Yes, and Mumu too for sure.
I'm a little more
Um,
ambitious. I see like Rise and Cassiopeia picking it up like in the old days.
Yeah, So should we just skip around and pick out the ones that we think are the biggest changes, or what's the plan here?
Yeah, I guess.
Alright. One of the biggest ones for me is Storm Surge. I think that this is an item that came out in a really strong state, got nerfed a few times, and was still okay, and is getting some really nice buffs for the ranged users. So basically, any mage rather than like an AP assassin or something. Mages who are using Storm Surge are going to benefit a lot from this. Higher bonus movement speed and just much more damage on Squall.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not a ton to say about it, but I think it's like really good.
Yeah, I think the biggest change, I mean, obviously, I think the boots changes are all going to be very interesting to see. I mean, most of it's just money, but like Berserker Greaves.
Yeah. So
But
basically,
Kraken
all the boots
Slayer,
got nerfed to reset.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, Kraken Slayer is just the biggest one that stands out to me. And even Cosmic Drive. Cosmic Drive makes you more like movement heavy and less just face tanky. But I want to hear you guys' thoughts on Kraken Slayer before I say anything.
Well, my original speculation is that there's only a very, very sparse few melee champions that would even take on building Kraken Slayer, so the fact that they're nerfing it specifically for range units seems kind of counterintuitive.
Well, I think they did increase the Oh, no. They didn't increase the melee damage. They only decreased the range damage, correct?
As long as it's not true damage anymore, I don't really care. Although I am kind of still upset by the fact that Kraken Slayer no longer gives critical strike anymore, because it kind of is like the odd man out in a lot of 80 carry builds suddenly.
It's
Oh
just
no,
the
I really
on
like
hit.
that. Go on.
It's just on hit. It's just on hit damage. Like
Yeah,
Cosmo.
I actually really like piggybacking onto that it doesn't give critical strike. This is designed for on-hit type of champions that want to build a lot of attack speed and aren't necessarily and on-hit effects as well, and aren't necessarily trying to deal a lot of AD times critical strike chance damage with their auto attacks. I think that the stat line is essentially correct. I've always felt this was a strong item for ADCs, and therefore I don't really mind seeing it get nerfed that much, but this is a terrible nerf for most of its core user base, which is the ADCs. The Tristanas, the Kog'Maws, whatever of the world. Losing the movement speed and more importantly, losing 20% of the on-hit damage is pretty damning. I mean,
Yeah, I
sure,
can't even think
Master
of.
Yi and Trundle can still use it.
You pick up Kraken Slayer on Trundle?
This man hasn't played Trundle a day in his life. Don't listen to him.
I was gonna say, I don't think I would bring Kraken Slayer on
Dude,
Trundle. I don't know about that one.
I got deleted late game in less than 1 second by a Kraken Slayer Trundle.
Okay, so he's just trauma splaining right now.
No, he hasn't played Trundle
I've seen it a
ever.
lot. I've seen it a lot.
I can't think of many melee characters that would run Kraken Slayer. I think of like Aurelia and Yi,
Yeah, really.
like maybe like Warwick, maybe even Urgot, honestly, but like that's a stretch, and I think he counts as range champion actually. That now that I say that out loud.
Yeah, I don't think you want this in Urgot.
I
But
think the most common melee person that builds this is probably Katarina, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Triggers all the on hits with Death Lotus. Yeah. There's definitely some of them. I'm telling you, man. Like those Kraken Slayer Trundles, ridiculous.
The truth is, he can basically just build any on-hit item and melt people.
Especially once there's a Terminus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is kind of sad to see for the ADCs out there. And honestly, like with the way that they kind of separated out the different types of ADC items a few patches ago, which I applauded, right? Like the AD items, the attack speed items, and the crit items. This really the Kraken Slayer really did occupy an important place for a few of the on-hit heavy ADC users.
I don't really want to go
Yeah.
into like a huge rant, but I'm really upset by like the state of the 80 carry items in the game right now. I feel like every 80 carry, the hyper carries are what I mean, are basically all forced to build 4 of like the exact same items, and then like basically shoehorned into building one of only like they only have like 3 other choices to get like their 100% crit build, and then they get their one-off item, which almost has to be Bloodthirster or they have no sustain, because they foolishly took away all of the critical strike items that also had lifesteal. So every AD carry basically has to build Berserker Greaves, Infinity Edge, Collector, their Armor Pen crit item, and then they're shoehorned into only building like 2 other things and Bloodthirster. I feel like it's a very, very one-dimensional build path right now for AD carries.
I definitely agree.
I'll agree with that to an extent in terms of like some of the things like the lifeline items, actually, which used to be feasible while they were mythics, got pushed out of the meta.
That used to give lifesteal.
Transition. Yeah. But I will also halfway be a Riot apologist here and say that part of the benefit of the ADC items rework from a few patches ago was to make it so that different ADCs do build different items, right? It's not like you have like your one-stop shop for the attack speed and the critical strike. If you're a champion that likes critical strike, you'll build A. If you're a champion that likes on-hit or attack speed, you'll build B. If you're a champion that likes both, there is a C for both of those. So I think that each champion maybe is pushed into more one-dimensional builds where you build the same thing game after game after game. But different champions at the ADC role will build different items now, much more so than at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's definitely a solid point. To build on what Casey was saying, the Mortal Minded LDR nerf though is gonna hit hard for ADCs, especially because it's so shoehorned. Like he was saying, like it feels like anyone who builds crit as an ADC like has to build one of those 2 items in order to be like their prime source of damage, especially with the Kraken's Lair no longer being crit.
You have to, because if you don't have Lethal Tempo's attack speed, you need the Armor Pen from one of the Lost Chapter items. You're forced to buy almost every of the same items if you're any of the crit 80 carries, which is most of the roster. Obviously, things like Kog'Maw and like Ezreal and Corki, they're going to build slightly different things. That's fine. But most of the champions have to build this way.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of champions that'll build different things, right? You've got your MF, you've got your Zeri. I mean, they're all building like like I don't think that there is even a real quintessential archetype of an ADC in the game, right? Even if you think like the classic ADCs, things like maybe Draven or I mean, even like Xayah might fit that a little bit. I'm definitely missing a few, just not thinking of them well. But they've really kind of diversified, what an ADC is over time. And I don't think that you can like think of like maybe even Ashe is like a much more like supportive utility type of ADC. I don't think you can think of like one champ and say, yeah, this really represents what all ADCs are anymore. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I made fun of like the mythics when they first came out, but now I long for like being able to have crit items that also had lifesteal, being able to have the choice between not opting into Infinity Edge. And remember, for like a few years, it was very common to not see Infinity Edge in a full build, because you had the freedom to take all of these other utility items. You had your Gale Forces, you had your the Immortal Shield Bow when it actually was overloaded with stats and had a cool effect. And I don't remember what the other 2 mythics were, but they were good too. They did something.
One of them was
unique.
the Shield Bow, and I think one of them was the Essence Reaver?
No, not Essence Reaver.
No? What was the other one?
I don't know. There was 4 of them. I don't remember what they were.
Yeah, I think the Essence Reaver was the 4th.
No, it definitely was. It just had a sheen effect back then.
Okay.
Anyway, enough complaining about that. I'm just salty because Lethal Tempo is gone and Crit doesn't have lifesteal.
Yeah, I still think that like the I know that we had touched on this for a second, but like, why do you guys think that they nerfed all of the boots, made them more expensive, and reduced their effects? Was this about build diversity, or are we just trying to like
Might be
remove
about
movement from the game?
it might be about movement. It might be about trying to avoid people just running boots first every single game.
Uh-huh.
So I guess not build diversity in end game, but build diversity in early game maybe.
Right. I'm not sure I saw people doing that, but if they were, then yeah, this is one way to do that.
It might be them just trying to reel back all the fucking movement. Oh my bad. All the movement that they've been like giving like new champions. Just trying to
Just
slow the
like,
game down a little bit.
yeah, just making sure that all that movement doesn't happen until it's late game and there's 9 people in the fight. Yeah, that kind of makes some sense.
I don't have really good theory, but the one thing I did notice is that the Ninja Tabbies had a partial reversion on its nerf. It was 12% reduction, and then it was 8, and now it's back to 10. And I still think that's a pretty powerful effect. I wish it tracked how much damage it reduced, because I bet it would be pretty good.
The Ninja Tabis are just auto attack damage, right? It's not all physical. Or is it all physical?
No, it's auto attacks.
No, it's primarily
on
auto attacks.
Auto attacks, yeah. I don't know. I think, it obviously depends on the champion that you're playing against. But, certainly if you're going against, like, a top lane bruiser or a fighter or something like that, 10% off of that isn't spectacular. It's okay. This is maybe one reason why they nerfed Cassiopeia, because she's, like, the one champ that doesn't even need to buy boots.
Oh, that would actually make sense.
That seems a bit of a stretch.
It is a little bit stretchy, right? But like, if they didn't touch her, and she gets this like one essentially like 200 gold bonus of everybody else in the game has to spend 200 gold more and she doesn't. And if you look at Cosmic Drive, I don't think we talked about that one, but that's an item that's really good on Cassiopeia. And they just buffed the hell out of this. 100 extra health and more bonus movement speed until you reach level 18. This is really nice. Spell Dance is not a hard passive to trigger. It's just every time you deal ability damage, you get this bonus movement speed. I think this is actually a very underrated item and just got another buff.
I like it, but I want my 40 ability haste back.
Yeah, I kind of wish there
say the same thing.
I completely agree. I wish there were 2 different versions of like this effect. One which had 40 ability haste and no health, because there's a lot of like champions, Aurora, Sona, whatever, that want to use a lot of abilities that need that bonus movement speed, but don't really have a great use for 300 health on top of it. And then, there are a lot of champs like the Battle Mages, right? The Cassiopeias and Rises of the world that do want that health. And I kind of wish that there was a version that gave even a little bit more health than this, and maybe didn't have base movement speed on top of it. And then there was another version that had the full 40 ability haste, which would just be the primo haste version, haste item for spell users. Because for some reason there's AD items that have tons of ability haste and ability haste passives on them. But didn't have the health, because those champions didn't need it. Either way, I really like this item.
Well, you guys got any more item stuff to talk about?
I think that's it for me.
No, I did find the Fleet Footwork and Dark Harvest changes interesting.
But yeah, we're getting there. That's after the items.
Yeah, anything else? No, I don't think so.
Alright, then let's move on to the runes. Let's talk about Dark Harvest and Fleet Footwork. I have to say that in the modern era, you really don't see Dark Harvest in like normal Summon or Rift games. I'm not really convinced this is going to change that. I don't really think they went far enough. First thing they got to do, they have got to get rid of this goofy lockout timer that prevents you from getting more charges faster when you get takedowns. That was just a stupid idea. It just makes you less ambitious. It makes you punished for like opportunism almost. That you can't.
Do you think that they should reduce it to 0? Is what you're saying?
There should
takedown cooldown.
Yeah, there should be no cooldown. You shouldn't be punished for like getting 4 or 5 charges like instantly. That's just kind of dumb, in my opinion at least. And I do think in the late game you should be able to get stacks much faster. I think that this should be the keystone you take for the long-term payout. but I just it doesn't feel like it operates that way. This should be like the late game
Yeah.
electrocute, essentially.
I mean, it does seem like they're working towards. They didn't change the numbers, but they did make it seem like, based on what I'm reading just here, you can get your stacks faster now, so you can hit those earlier power spikes with it.
Yeah, I mean they did give it some buffs recently, and it looks like they're adding slightly more buffs to this. I agree with Chrissy that I don't think this is going to push it into the meta in any significant way.
No, but they could be inching towards it.
Yeah, I think that the cooldown is global, right? Once you get a Dark Harvest stack with a skill, you can't get any more Dark Harvest stacks for 35 to 40 seconds until you get a takedown, right?
Yes.
And I think it would be cool if they did it per target instead. I think that would actually be enough.
I don't think it actually works that way. I don't think you can harvest another one while it's on cooldown. Someone's not going to glow red as long as it's on cooldown. Just by getting another takedown, I don't think you reduce it or you reactivate it like that. Which is another mistake in the design of it, though.
No, when you get a takedown, people will glow red 1 second later.
I'm not sure about that.
No, that I am sure that's how it works. What I would really like though is if like some of the other things that go per target in the game, like Heartsteel, for instance, I think is per target. I would really like it if they make Dark Harvest's cooldown also be per target. So once you harvested somebody, you couldn't harvest them again for, let's say, 45 seconds. But if you're in a team fight and you harvest somebody's low health, that's not going to lock you out from harvesting every other person who's low health in that team fight. I think that would make it an exciting.
Also, I'd just like to say, at one point on the PvE, they also had a huge buff to the amount of damage per soul, but they pulled back on that and it's not here anymore.
Right. Now I remember they did something with it last patch, but did they actually change the damage? I think they did, but it was only by a little bit, right?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Not enough.
Yeah, just this needs to more consistently pay out its end game reward. I think to be a good rune on the Rift. I think that's the easiest way to say it. What do you guys think?
Definitely. Compared to Electrocute, Comet, or even Airy, and what they can provide for you in the early game, the late game payout does not compensate enough.
Yeah, I think that's well said.
Now let's talk about Fleet Footwork, and how somehow it's even worse in the only part of the game that it matters. What do you think about that?
I don't know. For me, the Fleet Footwork has never really been about the healing. It's been more about the movement speed.
Yeah, I have a friend who says that too. Personally, I've just never been a fan of it. I always thought that the other three were just so much better, and I'd rather have more offensive power than lane sustain, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, this breaks even at level 12. If you're relying on healing on Fleet Footwork for your healing at level 12, learn to play League. Is all I've got to say. This is a straight up nerf. I agree that the movement speed is an important part of it, and they didn't touch that. But they're basically just removing all of the early game lane sustain from Fleet Footwork, and in my opinion, that makes it bad.
Yeah, I mean, Fleet Footwork, the movement speed is really strong. Even on someone like Nasus, where you would think that the healing early game sustaining would be why you pick it, but it's almost feels like if I ever bring Fleet Footwork on Nasus, it's more about the movement speed. I can go in, queue a minion, and just get out, and my enemy can't really do much to contest me.
I used to take it on Nasus too. You used to be able to run like a Doran's Ring and Fleet Footwork on Nasus. This was back when the AP ratio wasn't nerfed 27,000 times, and it was really good on him in the laning phase.
Yeah. Or just stupid people like Caitlyn will use it for the movement speed. She can poke someone and then walk up and poke them again and use the movement speed to run them down or quintop.
I'm like mousing over this. I can't believe at one time the AP ratio on this was 60%. Now it's 5. That is so sad.
Whoa. Do you know what the AD ratio was when the AP was?
It was probably like 70 or 80% bonus or something, I imagine.
Oh my god.
It was definitely way higher than
That's
this.
Well, that makes the heal relevant in the late game, right? Because like this crappy 70 base heal at level 12 isn't going to do much for you. But 70% of your AD might have.
I feel like after 15, once you get to like the 15-20 minute mark, it's like you're not even playing the game with the keystone anymore. It's like other AD carries are going to have like press the attack right now is like the flavor of the month. So I don't know, it just feels very underwhelming.
Yeah, and even like the 20% bonus movement speed, right? Like that's easily comparable to every single spell you cast with Cosmic Drive.
They need to make that last longer to compensate.
Oh yeah, Cosmic Drive even lasts longer than this, 1.25. I just have never particularly liked Fleet Footwork. Not that I play a lot of ADC, but I don't really think that my ADC gets a lot of value out of taking this over, depending on the champion, Conquer or Lethal Tempo when it was in the game.
I will die on my hill that the movement speed part is more relevant than the healing part.
That's probably true now, yeah.
We just don't think that it's enough to compensate for what the other keystones will give you.
Yeah, it's like you pick this for laning phase, and that's like it.
Like, imagine for a second that Fleet Footwork wasn't one of the keystones. Would it really be that out of place if this was just in the third row instead?
And it gave you, let's say, no healing and just...
If it just did exactly what it does, would it really be that crazy to think of this as just one of the runes that's in the bottom row?
It would be really strong for a bottom row.
It would be really strong to have both the effects, but yeah, if you only gave the bonus movement speed or only gave the heal, it would absolutely be at home in the bottom.
Yeah, maybe lower the numbers a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's not like this is with every auto. You need 100 charges, which is not that hard to get, but, again, compare it to Cosmic Drive, which is giving you 2 seconds of the same bonus movement speed on every single spell that you hit.
That's another thing. If it just triggered more often, I don't think I'd rag on it as much. That it's been nerfed like 56 times.
That would be, I don't know, it'd be a little bit too strong if it triggered more often, specifically with the movement speed. I think of like someone like Quintop or Vayne Top who run this and just make the game unplayable as a ranged top laner.
Or even Draven would be able to run you down and you'd never be able to get away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I would definitely be on board for them increasing the amount of time that you got the movement speed for.
Yep. Plus, they can always just have it, like, change with your level. It wouldn't have to be crazy, like, early on. Then you'd actually get something in the late game.
Since you're the biggest proponent of using Fleet Footwork here, because Chrissy and I hate it, if they were to completely remove the heal, just entirely, you get no lane sustain from this. What kind of movement speed buff do you think they'd be able to give you and still make it like a fair and good keystone? How crazy could they get?
It wouldn't. It would still be really strong without the healing if the movement speed was just increased, honestly, just by like 1% more than what it is now.
Well, that's
Think of like Caitlyn bot, or like Vayne or Quintop. Those I keep coming back to those, but those are like the key people that use it. People that have range advantage. They can use it for poke to get in and out. Like, you're removing the sustain from it, right? So you only focus on people who want to use it for movement speed.
Right.
That's gonna be people who are dancing around you, kiting around you, that you already feel like are difficult matchups to contest.
If you want way more movement speed, why don't you just take Phase Rush? It gives a shitload more.
Because this is more consistent poke. Phase Rush has a longer cooldown and requires spells. So think of like an auto attack like Caitlyn. How is she gonna trigger Phase Rush? You need to use 3 unique. You can't just auto summon 3 times and activate Phase Rush. Can you?
No, you can auto summon.
You can.
But then you gotta play into like the sorcery tree, like.
And the cooldown isn't that long.
I don't know. I'd rather. Phase rush seems weird to me on Caitlyn.
I'd
I'd rather go
rather,
in for one attack, two attacks, and then while I still have my movement speed, get out and get that attack speed
Footwork gives it
initially.
to you up front, which is nicer for something like that. I still think it would be fun to have those champs, be spending their keystone to be able to, really be kind of a annoying little flies, and you have to figure out the right time to take them down. Again, with
Sounds
the
like someone who's never
energized
played
charges,
against a
not
Vayne
like
top.
they do this every few seconds.
I know I feel your pain, man.
Yeah.
I play
Vayne
against all the
screws
annoying
jungle.
range thing top all the time.
Yeah.
So do I just call my jungler and over, and they go 0-11.
We're not talking about Garen, dog. Everyone can play Garen.
Does that wrap up everything?
Yep, that
I
is
think
it.
so.
Alright, well that does it for patch 14.15, and we'll see all you guys next time.